The construction site buzzed with the usual mid-morning chaos, jackhammers pounding, forklifts groaning, radios blaring somewhere under the scaffolding. Marcus Benton parked his dusty black pickup along the temporary fencing, stepping out with a rolled blueprint tucked under one arm. He wore plain khakis, a white polo, and old boots, clean but not flashy. Just like he preferred. The sun was high already, making the gravel crunch hot beneath his soles. He adjusted his sunglasses and headed toward the chain-link gate. A young white man in a neon vest and hard hat stepped in front of him, palm raised. "Hey, deliveries go around back," he said. No greeting. No eye contact. Marcus paused, let the words settle. "I'm not delivering," he said. The man squinted at him. "Then you're looking for someone?" "This area is restricted to authorized personnel." Marcus pulled out his ID, holding it loosely between two fingers. "I am authorized." The man didn't even glance at it. "Yeah, I've heard that before. You need a badge to get on the site, sir." A moment passed. Marcus smiled slightly. He didn't reach for his badge. Instead, he just said, "Who's the site foreman today?" The man tilted his head, annoyed. "Dan's running the crew. You can't talk to him until I'll wait for Dan." Marcus's tone was easy, calm, but the pause that followed stretched longer than it should have. The man didn't move. Then, reluctantly, he keyed his radio. "Dan? Got some guy out front. Says he's authorized but doesn't have a badge." There was static, then a voice. "What's the name?" The young man turned back to Marcus. "Name?" Marcus looked out past the fencing at the half-finished frame of the community center rising from the dirt. Then he looked back. Marcus Benton. The name hit the radio like a dropped wrench. There was a long silence, just static. Then Dan's voice came back, tighter this time. "Benton? Marcus Benton?" The young man at the gate straightened slightly. "Yeah. He says that's his name." Another pause. This one shorter. "I'll be right there." The man at the gate finally glanced down at the ID still hovering in Marcus's hand. His eyes flicked over the photo, then the name, then back to Marcus's face. His jaw tightened. "You an engineer or something?" he asked, trying for casual. "No," Marcus replied. He didn't offer anything more. They stood in that silence, the young man shifting his weight from one foot to the other, suddenly unsure of himself. A few workers nearby had noticed. One, a Latino man hauling steel rods, gave Marcus a nod of recognition. The others didn't make eye contact. The gate worker cleared his throat. "You, been here before?" Marcus nodded once. "Every week. For the past 6 months." The worker's face flushed. He looked like he wanted to say something, but the words didn't come. That's when Dan rounded the corner, hard hat in hand, a thin line of sweat streaking his temple. He spotted Marcus and stopped short. Then he picked up his pace. "Mr. Benton," Dan said quickly, voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Didn't know you were stopping by today." Marcus turned to him, expression unreadable. "Thought I'd walk the site. See how things are coming." Dan nodded, already flustered. "Absolutely. Let me take you through." He turned to the gate worker. "You let him stand out here?" The worker opened his mouth, but no sound came. Dan didn't wait for an answer. "He's not a visitor. He's the lead architect. This whole project is his design." Marcus didn't flinch. Didn't gloat. He just stepped forward, ducking under the chain-link gate as Dan held it open. The worker stood frozen, his gaze trailing after them as they disappeared into the site. Marcus didn't look back. He never did. The gravel shifted under Marcus's boots as he walked beside Dan through the site. Framed walls rose like skeletons on all sides. Workers called out measurements, maneuvered plywood, adjusted beams. None of them looked directly at him. "Not yet." Dan tried to fill the silence. "We've poured the second slab. Drywall's ahead of schedule. I had the HVAC team start early next week, like you noted." Marcus nodded once. "Good." They stopped in the center of what would be the community hall. Steel beams stretched overhead like ribs. The space echoed with hammer strikes and the hum of power tools. Marcus unrolled the blueprints on a makeshift table of plywood and sawhorses. "This window line's off," he said, tracing a mark with his finger. "It should follow the curve of the ceiling. That's in revision 5. Dan leaned in, flustered. "We used the set from last month. No one sent us the update." Marcus looked at him. "Calm. I sent it myself. Emailed, flagged it urgent 2 weeks ago." Dan's face reddened. "I'll fix it." Marcus rolled the blueprint slowly. "Do that." Around them, the noise seemed to soften. Workers stole glances, now some curious, some calculating. One young black man on a scaffolding paused, wiped his brow, then gave Marcus a small nod. Marcus returned it. "Barely." Dan cleared his throat. "You want to address the crew? Might be good for morale." Marcus looked out at the rising structure. "His structure." "No," he said. Dan blinked. "No? I didn't come to give speeches. I came to see if my work's being respected." He locked eyes with Dan. "That's morale." Dan swallowed. "Understood." Marcus adjusted the rolled blueprint under his arm. Behind him, the crew was still watching. He didn't mind. He wanted them to. As Marcus moved through the site, the sounds shifted. Hammers slowed. Conversations dipped, picked back up in softer tones. A few workers straightened their backs when he passed. Not out of formality, out of something else. Uncertainty. Maybe guilt. He stopped near the framing for the youth center wing where two men were measuring out a stud wall. One of them, older, white, with a sun-creased face, looked up as Marcus approached. "You with the architect?" he asked, nodding toward the blueprint in Marcus's hand. Marcus looked at him, expression unreadable. "I am the architect." The man's mouth opened slightly. "Oh." His coworker glanced away, suddenly interested in the measurement tape. Marcus didn't say anything more. He just stood there, watching as they worked. The older man cleared his throat. "Didn't know." Marcus nodded once. "You do now." A quiet passed between them, brief but weighty. He turned and kept walking. Behind him, the older man watched him go. Didn't say a word. Didn't have to. The site's temporary office was a white trailer parked near the edge of the lot, its windows dusty, its steps worn. Marcus climbed them slowly, his boots thudding against the metal. Inside, two men sat at folding desks covered in papers and empty coffee cups. One of them, slim, glasses, mid-40s, looked up, startled. Oh, can I help you?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He closed the door behind him, set the blueprint on the nearest desk, and looked around the cramped space. Blueprints pinned to corkboards. A framed rendering of the Finnish community center. His rendering. He stepped closer, pointing to it. "That image. Who signed off on it?" The man hesitated, then pulled a folder from a stack. "It says M. Benton." The lead, he stopped himself. Marcus turned to face him fully. "You didn't recognize the name?" "No, sir. I mean, I read it. I just didn't picture someone like me." The silence after that wasn't uncomfortable. It was honest. The man shifted in his seat, hands fidgeting with the folder. "It's a good design," he offered. Marcus nodded. "It's more than that. It's mine." He walked to the rendering, stared at it for a long moment. Then back at the man behind the desk. "I'll be around the site the rest of the week. Let the team know." "Yes, sir." Marcus turned to leave. No anger in his voice. No raised tone. But as the door clicked shut behind him, the quiet inside the trailer stayed heavy. Word traveled fast. By the time Marcus returned to the main site path, the crew was different. Not in what they were doing, but how they moved. Less joking. Fewer sideways looks. More nods of recognition. Tentative. Careful. A group of younger workers stood near the framework for the kitchen wing. One of them, Hispanic, maybe mid-20s, stepped forward as Marcus approached. "Mr. Benton?" he asked. Marcus paused. "Yes. I just wanted to say it's a solid design. Clean layout. Flows right?" The others nodded. One offered a quiet, "Yeah, it's smart." Marcus didn't smile, but there was something lighter in his eyes. "Appreciate that," he said. "You all doing good work out here." The tension eased slightly. Shoulders relaxed. Someone chuckled softly. Marcus looked around the open framing, the sun cutting hard lines across the beams. "You know why this place matters?" he asked, voice low. The young man shrugged. "It's a job." Marcus shook his head. "This is a space where kids are gonna come after school. Where single parents will leave their toddlers to go work another shift. Where seniors can sit in air conditioning and feel like someone remembered them." He let the words settle. "This isn't just walls. It's shelter." They didn't know how to respond. So they didn't. And that was fine. Because Marcus didn't need applause. He needed them to build it right. Later that afternoon, Dan found Marcus again, this time near the west wing where the roof trusses were being unloaded. He approached slower than before. Not flustered now. Just thoughtful. "Crew's talking," he said. Marcus didn't look up. He was studying the angle of a beam, checking it against the line of the foundation. "They should be." Dan adjusted his hard hat. "I owe you a better introduction. Should have walked you in myself. Made it clear who you are." Marcus glanced at him. "You mean you should have told them I wasn't the delivery guy?" Dan winced. "Yeah." There was no anger in Marcus's voice. Just truth. He stepped back from the beam and turned fully to face him. "You've got a good crew," he said. "But culture starts at the top." Dan nodded slowly. "Yeah, it does." Marcus looked past him, out toward the scaffolding and concrete, the web of steel and sweat and expectation. "This center, it's not just about what it looks like when it's done. It's about who feels welcome walking through it." Dan looked down. "I get that now." Marcus let the moment breathe. "You said we're ahead on drywall?" Dan blinked. "Yeah. By a week." "Good. Let's stay there." And with that, he walked away, leaving Dan standing alone in the dust and sun, thinking about introductions. And about how many he'd gotten wrong without knowing it. Inside the temporary break room, an old shipping container with a fridge and mismatched chairs, conversations halted when Marcus stepped in. It wasn't hostile. Just quiet. A few men sat hunched over sandwiches, others scrolled their phones. One woman in paint-streaked overalls looked up, gave a small, respectful nod. Marcus nodded back. He walked to the far end, poured himself a cup of stale coffee. No cream. No sugar. He didn't sit. He just stood there for a moment, sipping, watching the wall where someone had tacked up a printed floor plan, his floor plan, marked with greasy fingerprints and red circles. One of the men, older, maybe early 50s, cleared his throat. Didn't expect to see the architect out here. Marcus turned slightly. You think I designed from an office and never walked the dirt? The man looked down at his sandwich. Most do. Marcus set the coffee down. That's why most get it wrong. Someone chuckled. It broke the silence just enough. The woman in overalls tilted her head. You're the one who added the skylights in the daycare wing, right? Marcus nodded. Kids need light. She smiled. Good call. The conversation didn't fully return, but the air softened. Marcus picked up his cup again, drank the rest in one long swallow. Then he left just as quietly as he came. But this time, no one looked away. That evening, as the crew wrapped up and shadows stretched long over the site, a group gathered near the entrance. Some smoked. Others packed up gear. A woman arrived, mid-30s, holding the hand of a little boy, maybe 6 years old. Her shirt had the logo of a local nonprofit. She was there to check on something with the foreman, paperwork for upcoming community programming. Marcus spotted them as he crossed the lot. The boy let go of his mother's hand and wandered toward the fence, eyes wide at the half-built structure. He pointed. What's that going to be? Marcus crouched beside him. That's where you'll read books. Right over there, that'll be the art room. And see that space? That's a play area. The boy's eyes grew wider. You building it? Marcus nodded. Helping too. Designed it. The boy thought for a second. You make places? He asked. Marcus smiled, just a little. I try to. The mother approached, hesitant. I'm sorry, is he bothering? Marcus stood. Not at all. She looked at him for a moment, then down at her son. You remember what we talked about architects? The boy nodded. They make places safe. Marcus looked at her. She looked back. No more words passed. None were needed. The next morning, Marcus arrived early, before most of the crew. The site was quiet, still damp with dew, the noise of construction not yet begun. He liked it this way. Clean. Uninterrupted. As he walked toward the main trailer, the young gate worker from 2 days before stepped out from behind the fencing. The one who'd told him deliveries go around back. He looked nervous. Held a folded paper in one hand. Didn't speak right away. Marcus stopped. The worker took a breath. I didn't know who you were. That's not an excuse. He stopped himself, looked down. I assumed. I shouldn't have. Marcus studied him for a moment. What did you assume? He asked. Calm. Neutral. The worker hesitated. That you didn't belong. That people who look like you don't design buildings like this. Marcus didn't blink. Doesn't feel good saying that out loud, does it? No, the worker whispered. Marcus nodded once. Good. That means you felt it. The worker held out the paper. I wrote it down. The apology. I figured, maybe that's the first step. Marcus took it, didn't read it. Just folded it again. Slipped it into his pocket. You don't fix assumptions by writing them away, he said. You fix them by changing what you do next time. The worker nodded. Quiet. Humbled. Marcus turned and walked on, the paper still in his pocket. He didn't need the words. He just needed them to mean something. That afternoon, Marcus left the site early and drove across town to the architecture firm's headquarters, a modern glass building with clean lines and a minimalist lobby. He didn't like coming here often. Inside the conference room, a handful of executives waited around a long oak table. A large print of the community center design sat propped on an easel. One of the senior partners, a tall man in a tailored navy suit, stood when Marcus walked in. Marcus, he said, smiling. We just heard back from the city. They're thrilled with the progress. They want you to speak at the ribbon cutting. Marcus set his tablet on the table. I'm not interested in the photo op. A woman across the table frowned. But it would be a good look. Press coverage. Visibility. Marcus leaned forward slightly. I wasn't hired to be seen. I was hired to make something that lasts. There was a pause. Someone cleared their throat. There's been talk. From the crew. Said you went out unannounced. Got mistaken for a laborer. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's not a story. That's a pattern. The room shifted uneasily. I don't need a stage, he continued. I need leadership here to understand that design doesn't stop at the drawing board. If people don't feel welcome in the buildings we make, we've failed. No one interrupted. Marcus stood. This project is about dignity. Remember that. And with that, he left, leaving behind silence, and the faint sound of their own thoughts catching up. Back at the site the next day, Dan called a full crew meeting before work began. It was unusual. Most mornings were rush and routine. Everyone gathered, some with hard hats in hand, others still sipping coffee, unsure what this was about. Marcus stood off to the side, arms crossed. Dan cleared his throat. I want to say something. About earlier this week. The noise quieted. Even the wind seemed to ease. We got a reminder, Dan continued, that how we treat people, especially when we don't know who they are, Says more about us than anything else. A few crew members looked down. Others stared straight ahead. Mr. Benton wasn't asking for special treatment. He was asking for the same respect we'd give anyone else walking through that gate. Dan's voice didn't rise. He didn't get emotional, but he was clear. And for what it's worth, he added, glancing at Marcus. He's earned a hell of a lot more than that. Marcus stepped forward. He looked at them, not as workers, not as men and women on a payroll, but as people who needed to hear one thing. I don't need a title to command respect, but you should ask yourselves why it took one for you to give it. Then he stepped back. No applause, no pats on the back, just a long silence, heavy but honest, the kind that leaves a mark. Late in the day, as the sun dipped low, Marcus walked past the youth center wing again. The framing was complete, the insulation stacked nearby. A few workers were finishing the final sheathing on the far wall. One of them, the same older man who'd asked if Marcus was with the architect, stood on a ladder, hammer in hand. He spotted Marcus and called down. Hey, mind if I show you something? Marcus nodded. Go ahead. The man climbed down, wiped his hands on his jeans, and led Marcus around to the inside wall. There, etched into the plywood, faint but clear, were 4 words burned in with a wood burner. Designed with all in mind. Marcus stared at it, not quite smiling, but something softer passed across his face. Some of us, the man said, eyes on the writing, we've been doing this a long time, and we forget buildings aren't just about how they stand. It's about who they stand for. Marcus said nothing. He didn't need to. Instead, he reached out, ran his hand lightly over the words, then gave a single nod before turning to walk away. Behind him, the man watched, quieter now, changed. A week later, the center stood finished. Clean lines, open spaces, skylights pouring light into the rooms where it mattered most. The city held a ribbon cutting. Media showed up. So did the mayor, local officials, community leaders. Marcus stood off to the side, just outside the crowd. He wore the same boots, the same quiet expression. The mayor gave a speech, called it a symbol of unity. Applause followed. Cameras clicked. When it came time to cut the ribbon, someone called out for Marcus. Mr. Benton, would you do the honors? He stepped forward slowly, took the scissors, didn't pose. He just looked out at the building for a moment, then cut the ribbon with a single, clean snip. The crowd clapped. A little boy near the front, same one from before, whispered to his mom, That's the guy who made the place. His mom nodded, eyes on Marcus. That's right. Marcus handed the scissors back and stepped aside. No speech, no smile for the cameras, just presence. The building spoke louder than he ever would. By dusk, the crowd had cleared. The banners taken down, the podium packed away. Only a few staff remained inside, checking last details before the official opening the next day. Marcus stayed behind. He walked the halls slowly, past the playroom with its bright floors, past the reading lounge with wide windows, past the small cafe space where chairs had already been straightened. He stopped at the wall near the youth center wing, the one with the words etched in plywood, now sealed behind glass. It hadn't been part of the official tour. That was fine. It wasn't for them. A janitor passed him in the hallway, young, tired eyes, earbuds in. He nodded at Marcus without pause. Nice place, he said. Just that. Marcus nodded back. Thanks. As the janitor walked on, Marcus turned to the window. The last light of day bent through the skylights above. Soft, quiet. He didn't think about the first day, the gate, the assumptions, the eyes that saw him wrong. He thought about the next ones. The kids who'd laugh in the playroom. The seniors who'd rest in the cool. The parents who'd find space here when they had nowhere else. They wouldn't know his name. And they didn't have to. The building would remember it for them. The next morning, long before the doors opened, Marcus returned one last time. No crew. No suits. Just him. He walked the full perimeter alone. Touched the stone near the entrance. Checked the grain in the wood benches outside. Watched the sun hit the eastern glass just right, filling the rooms with warmth before a single person stepped inside. Inside the foyer, a bronze plaque had been mounted overnight. It listed the center's name, the funders, the city officials, and at the bottom, in smaller letters, almost quiet, Architect M. Benton. He stood there for a long while, then walked past it without pause, down the hallway, past the wall that now bore children's drawings taped up early by volunteers, past the etched plywood, now behind glass with words most would miss. He reached the back exit, pushed the door open. The air was cool, fresh. As he stepped out, a school bus turned the corner down the street. Early. Too early for drop-off, but not too early for what was coming. Marcus watched for a moment, then turned and walked away, not needing anyone to watch him go.